when you think of a human recruiter is more expensive and it's slower and it provides demonstrably worse customer service in almost all cases, why wouldn't all volume recruitment go this way?
Welcome to the Tech Savvy Recruiter, the podcast for recruitment and staffing agency owners keen to explore the tech innovations reshaping our industry. I'm Andrew Roger from recMate.
And I'm Belinda Kerr from Recruitment Garage, and together we're your hosts bringing you a stellar lineup of tech experts ready to help you understand and, more importantly, benefit from the increasing array of tech available to you today. This week on the Tech Savvy Recruiter, we'd like to welcome Ross Clennett. I've known Ross for a long time and have always admired his ability to go really deep into issues facing our industry and offering up well-researched and thought-provoking conversation. No need to ever fact check Ross. If he said it, it's correct. If you subscribe to Ross's blog, you'll know what I'm talking about here. And after an impressive career as a successful recruiter and recruitment leader, Ross now coaches high-performance recruitment leaders himself. And did I mention he used to be my boss Ross? So welcome, Ross, and thank you for joining us today. Is there anything before we kick off, anything else that you would like to add?
Thanks, BK. Great to be here. Hello, Andrew. The only thing I'd add is that I have my own podcast, Recruitment News Australia, with Adele Last, and that's a weekly dose of news and question of the week, and that's something we've been doing for about 18 months, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Yeah, good. Great fun. All right. Well, let's kick off then. As you know, Ross, I recently read your blog titled Volume Recruiters a Toast. The heading itself got me reading it. And I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that with you. And you start off in the blog by saying AI will inevitably eliminate 90% of human recruiters in volume recruitment within 5 years. Big call.
It is.
And then you go on to discuss an example whereby McDonald's, which I thought was a fascinating example, McDonald's are using the AI conversational assistant Olivia to handle their in-store recruitment. And I'd love to know what you found most interesting, not just about this case study, but particularly that, and then the conversation more generally.
Well, firstly, the company's Paradox, and Olivia as a chatbot's been around for 6 or 7 years. I first wrote about the chatbot after attending ATC in 2018. So that's the Australasian Talent Conference. And when I saw it then, I'm like, whoa, this is something else. And fast forward 6 years to the ATC again, this time held in Melbourne, and there's the very clear example that McDonald's have gone through where for all store level roles, this is how recruitment is undertaken. People apply on their phone, they're interacting with Olivia, the chatbot, and it's a conversation like it's with a human being. And the chat is connected to the calendar of the hiring manager in the store, which is typically the store manager or the assistant store manager. So the chatbot goes through basic questions depending upon what type of role it is. Clearly, right to work in Australia would be probably the first question that they ask. And if the candidate effectively passes that, then straight away they can be booked in for an interview and then also handle rescheduling of interviews. So there's no recruiter involved. It's simply the candidate, the chatbot, and the store manager's calendar. And then the candidate goes in for an interview, and then the process goes from there. So clearly, the candidate can do that any time, day or night, that they want. They can get an immediate real-time response, yes or no. And it encourages them to attend because, as we know as recruiters, one of the biggest problems in dropout is the difference between when an interview is booked and when the interview occurs. And so clearly, if the candidate applies, gets a response within an hour or two, booking in an interview, and if the interview's for the next day or the day after, there's a much greater likelihood that they are going to turn up. And the critical thing is the algorithm learns. So it's learning from the success of the candidates that have been placed exactly what else they need to be screening for, or what else in the candidate's application is going to be relevant. And it's just inevitable that this will be driven simply by candidates responding well to this and hiring managers getting a better result.
Which is the bottom line, isn't it?
It is. It is. And when you think of a human recruiter is more expensive and it's slower and it provides demonstrably worse customer service in almost all cases, why wouldn't all volume recruitment go this way?
It's really, really interesting. I mean, a case study in example, my daughter applied for a job with a big baker's brand name in most shopping malls. That was on the weekend. So she said, "Oh, Dad, I really want a job." So we did a resume together and put that application in. She's yet to hear anything. Okay, not even a thanks you application auto response. So that old adage around time kills all deals, but also time kills all delight as well. So bakers insert not delight maybe for this particular example, because you just can't. And listen, to be fair, with huge scale volume recruitment, it's very difficult for a human to give delight in that sort of scenario.
Without doubt. And this is the beginning of the end for the resume as well. Because for many of those jobs, McDonald's do not require a resume, because the basic information about the candidate is going to be things such as, do you have a right to work in Australia? How far away from the store do you live? Are you available to do this sort of shift work, like these sorts of hours? Can you lift 5 kilos? Whatever it might be, like, do you have any disability that may prevent you from doing this task or that task? That's information you do not need a resume for. And for almost all low-skilled jobs, it's not really depending upon your experience. It depends upon things like logistics, availability, and your competencies. And these are things that a LinkedIn profile is not relevant for. And that's why a chatbot is perfectly set up to take advantage of that and hence make the CV redundant for most low-skill roles. And I suspect all low-skill roles, well, I'd say 10 years at the absolute most.
So Andrew and I've got kids about the same age. So my daughters are just out finishing, or one is just finishing up school at the moment, and she's been on this same thing, jumping on all the websites, and they want videos and this and that and everything else. And she's actually stopped, like some of them, it definitely slowed her down by them asking for a video, because she got, she's 18, she gets nervous about all those sorts of things. But interesting, to Andrew's point as well, probably 1 in 10 of them will get back to her, and they're, similar sort of like McDonald's type jobs. So I think these companies are missing, like from the McDonald's example, these companies are obviously missing a real trick here if they're not.
And the other thing is the consumer perception, because if you're a candidate, you may also be, or likely to be, a customer. So Andrew, your daughter's experience of that particular baker's franchise means,
maybe I won't buy my finger bun from them anymore or something like that, right?
Well, it's all branding, isn't it? Everything you do is all about your reputation. Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Stuff.
At the basics, right? An auto response in there doesn't even have to be too personalised, right, Ross? It's just a place card saying, "Hey, we've got you. We've got your resume." It will take some time, whatever your spiel might be inside of that messaging, just to set expectations at the right level. It doesn't take much.
Candidates don't mind a no. Obviously they prefer a yes. But if it's no, then tell me quickly so I can move on.
Exactly.
This whole experience of applying and then not hearing something for weeks, I mean, there's just no excuse. Absolutely no excuse when you can see what tech does And you just wonder why some of these big businesses don't have their stuff sorted to ensure that at the very least they get back to every candidate. And yet clearly from candidate experience surveys, this is not happening.
Ross, how far down, like if you take volume recruitment at one end and, high end sort of Corn Ferry exec search at the other, how far do you think we can go with this across the spectrum of recruitment?
Well, if you look at, and I've written a blog about this company as well, Mercor have just landed $30 million worth of funding. And their product, so they're 3 21-year-olds, or I think they might be 22 now. And this company asserts that they can assess candidates and then set up an AI chatbot interview where the chatbot asks questions about their experience and skills, and then there's a 10-minute case study where the chatbot asks the candidate a question or effectively puts a proposition or a problem and asks the candidate how they propose to go about solving that problem.
Mm-hmm.
So no humans are involved there. Now, that is working in the world of tech recruitment where you've got a high volume of candidates with good technical skills overseas who can work remotely. They're desperate or certainly very happy to go through this sort of process to potentially get a relatively high-paying job with, say, a US or a European company. And this is where the world is flat is really coming into sharp focus in terms of the skilled labour market. Because although, of course, we've had that part of the market opened up for years through Elance and Guru and other sites like that, we're now seeing at scale recruitment. So it's not a marketplace where people have got to work out whether they're matched for each other. It's a large language model that's doing all of this assessment and shortlisting and comparison in the background without any humans involved at high speed. And again, the algorithms learning in real time. So every single one of these interviews that's occurring, the algorithms getting better and better at identifying, after the interviews have occurred and a candidate has been hired and then there's performance appraisals, all of that's fed back into the algorithm and all of this is helping it learn, making it better and better at matching. And you just think this company is not even 2 years old. Like, just imagine how much more effective that tech is going to be even by next Christmas, let alone this Christmas.
It's funny, when Andrew and I first started doing the Tech Savvy Recruiter about, nearly a year ago now, Andrew, not almost up to our first birthday, we'd sort of say, 5 years' time. Now we're sort of going 1-2 years' time, what are things going to look like? That window just feels like it's getting quicker and quicker.
No doubt. I mean, I've been in recruitment 35 years. Like, I started in 1989 as a 22-year-old recruiter, and I reckon there's going to be more change in the next 5 years than there's been in the whole 35 years in my career today. I've got absolutely no doubt about that. I think most recruiters are blissfully ignorant about the impact that large language models are going to have on their job and how quickly it's going to make many recruiters redundant. Obviously, volume recruiters are absolutely toast, but I think many other recruiters, they just have no idea how much things are going to change and how quickly it's going to happen.
I was just reflecting on your question to us around how deep does this run in terms of senior exec through to high volume, low paid jobs. And you might remember, BK, that we interviewed or David Tell was on our podcast a few sessions ago. He's from Kwal.ai, KWAL.ai. Similar type model, Ross, to the Paradox crew with Olivia around the AI module contacting the candidate. In this case, it's via voice. So they'll call the candidate and run through a series of initial questions. Then if they get those to the satisfaction level of the setting of the recruiter, they can then say, hey, Andrew, do you have an extra 5 minutes? You've progressed to the next stage. I've got a few deeper questions to see if you're a perfect match for this opportunity. And then they'll do a full interview with that individual. To your point, Ross, around the speed at which this stuff is developing, it's just phenomenal. I remember when I first heard the AI bots talking, there was a huge delay between the input and what their output was. That module is almost instant now. So you're getting a conversation happening between person and AI module, and it's almost indistinguishable from a human now. So it's getting, to your point, Ross, really interesting, let's put it, for the industry and how we employ technology. Where do we put and slot that human resource person in, as opposed to where we get the machine to take over?
Well, and this is where the candidate experience is coming back to bite us. Because if you look at the surveys, and they're pretty consistent, that already there's at least 50% of candidates that have been surveyed saying they're happy for more AI to be involved in recruitment. They believe AI is going to be less biased than a human recruiter. And you can't blame them. One, we've given them generally, as an industry, a poor experience. And then secondly, you look at the evidence about how racist and biased recruiters consistently are, and those candidates who are from minority groups rightly feel that they haven't been given a fair go. And so they're saying effectively, AI, bring it on, because I feel like it's a level playing field. And of course, there has been well-documented cases of bias baked into AI, but that will get sorted out for sure. I mean, it already is getting sorted out. But ultimately, the candidates are happy with it because they're not waiting for a recruiter to call back. They're not waiting. If they can have that experience with AI and feel that the process they went through in terms of the questions and the time effectiveness of it is worth their time, then they're going to vote for it every time.
I think there's a fallacy. I hear this all the time. Oh, I want to give a more personalized experience. But there's a difference between personalized experience and giving people a result. It's the result that people want. Ultimately, they're looking for an outcome. And if you can get a better outcome through a different path and it's automated, the person's ultimately going to be happier than if it's completely personal and things are falling through the cracks all the way along.
Completely. And we've learnt that right from when ATMs were installed in banks. You know, the original, like I was a university student when that started happening. And it's like, oh no, people won't like getting their money from a hole in the wall. They like to go into the branch and have the experience with the teller. Well, bullshit. Like bullshit. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it was bullshit then. Of course, it's completely bullshit now. I mean, as you say, BK, people want the result. They just want the cash.
Yeah.
Show
That's
me
right.
the money, right? As quickly and easily as possible.
That's such a good analogy.
It's very, 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 very quickly, fast-paced, changing environment. And I guess given the AI evolution, or is it a revolution, Ross? What are your thoughts around what corporates need to think about and what's imperative for recruitment agency owners to take that next step so they are still very relevant, as opposed to, hey, this is all going to be, this is a flash in the pan. It'll go back to the way it was, because it is really going to reshape the industry. What are your thoughts around what they need to think about skills and maybe roles, different roles that we've had in the traditional recruitment world? What are those changes going to bring, do you think?
Wow, that's a very broad question. So let me perhaps answer that question by saying that if you think about what large language models can do, you summarize them as write, find, and focus. So clearly in a recruitment context, they can write a job ad, they can write a position description, they can write a candidate summary. As we all know, recruiters aren't very good at doing things from scratch. So if you can have the AI produce, let's call it the first draft, and then the recruiter goes to work to polish it up a bit, great. Find. Clearly, again, AI going into the candidate database, finding candidates that match the particular assignment brief, fantastic. It saves the manual effort of doing that. But I think the real opportunity for leverage is in focus. And to answer your question directly, Andrew, and I've written a blog about this, to me, the absolute critical area for recruitment agency owners going forward is proprietary data. So let me give you a specific example here. The integrity of proprietary data is going to give recruitment agencies who understand its power and can apply its power an enormous advantage. So I'll give you just a hypothetical example. So a consultant takes a job. I'll just pick a job. Let's just say a financial accounting job at 120,000 in the Melbourne CBD. The job is entered into the database in the typical way that it would be. And so the AI immediately assesses that job, looks at all the similar jobs that that recruitment agency has attempted to fill and has filled, and immediately comes back and says, produces a result that says something like, I mean, you'd ask the appropriate question, but it basically says, you've got a 25% chance of filling this job within the next 4 weeks. However, if you can have the salary that the client's prepared to pay increase by 15,000 or broaden the selection criteria here and here, your likelihood of filling the job in the next 4 weeks rises to 80%. So what that does in terms of focus is that before the recruiter does anything, and in the olden days or even now, recruiters go, okay, let's see who I can find for 120,000. So they start sourcing. Well, what the AI is saying, no, don't start sourcing. The first thing you should do is attempt to get the client to pay more or to broaden the selection criteria. Because if, let's say, the consultant spends 15 minutes preparing for that conversation, and then the conversation with the client takes 10 minutes and it's successful, that approximate half an hour may have saved the consultant 15 hours in sourcing time to then go back to the client to say, look, I've just got these candidates, they're not really good enough, I think you need to pay more or broaden the brief. And what the leader can be doing is, instead of working out exactly what the consultant should do, the AI will help with what they should do, in other words, the focus. The recruitment leader can be there to coach. So in that hypothetical example, if you're my recruiter, Andrew, then I'm saying to you, so you're telling me what you found out from the AI, and I say, great, Andrew, are you confident to have a conversation with that client to increase the salary or to try and get the salary increased or broaden the selection criteria? And let's say you're relatively inexperienced, you're 7 or 8 months experienced, and you go, not really. Then it's going to be worth me spending 20 minutes of my time in a rigorous role play with you to build up your skills and confidence that when you pick up the phone to have that conversation with that client, that it succeeds, that you get a greater amount of money that the client's prepared to pay, or you broaden the selection criteria. So that, to me, is the real goal. It starts with proprietary data, because it's only when you've got high integrity with that proprietary data that a large language model can give you that sort of data or that sort of feedback. And then that helps the leader know their key role, coaching. And that's where I think the importance of coaching, I mean, of course, I'm a coach. I think it's very important now, but I think in the next few years, the importance of leadership coaching will just accelerate enormously.
Yeah. So I think what you're saying is that data set there, get it clean, get it tidy, make it relevant for your patch, your industry, your speciality, in preparation for what's going to come in the next 6, 12, 18 months. Let's face it, in my prediction, it's going to come that quickly for people if they want to employ those strategies around getting some assistance from those LLMs for my data.
Without doubt. And then to give you the other side of that if the consultant puts in a job and then they ask a question of the large language model, what do I need to know to maximize the likelihood of filling this job in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks? And the data comes back, or the answer is, we have an insufficient sample size to give you any accurate information, which immediately should tell the consultant, this is probably a low probability job. There's not enough in the candidate database. There's not enough in our history in recruiting roles like this to be confident that we can give you any guidance. And again, straight away, the recruiter should be going, maybe it's a job I shouldn't be touching. And the leader can then potentially provide additional input, but again, helping the consultant with making good decisions. Again, not investing 15 hours and finding that they can't find a candidate that fits what the client's looking for.
Do you know what I love about this as well is that it also gives, when the consultant's going to the client, it gives them some data, not just, I think you should pay more. It's like, here's the data to actually back up why I'm coming back to you. I want to help you get the best result, Mr. Client. This is the information that we now know, sharing that with you. Where should we go from here? I think that's because, half the time the consultants are just, what do I say? And like you say, the coaching absolutely helps there. But I think having that data, it just takes it another level, doesn't it?
No doubt. It's going to equip recruiters with more of what they need. Now, clearly, they need to have the influencing skills to be able to communicate it in an effective way, and that's where the leader as a coach comes in. But having the data in the first place is certainly going to help present a compelling case to the client, because in many cases, the client themselves may not be the decision maker on things like money. So if you're providing data that your client can take further up the food chain to justify more money, then that's helping your client help you.
Yeah, great. Super interesting.
Definitely data drives decisions, doesn't it? And really interesting chat. I mean, a traditional recruiter would often do a market map, right? And they'd get a sense of what the market is. We've done the research. This is what the market is at the moment. These are the levels. If you pay this, you get this. If you pay a little bit more, you'll get that. And if you want to pay a little bit lower to cope with that, you can build rather than buy. But this happens like that now, right? So the learning models can produce that instantaneously. And however, that system is, I guess, tweaked and tuned, can come up with a percentile chance of filling and then give the breakdown of why. And to increase the fill rate percentile, Andrew, we recommend you do A, B, and C. And that would be, what we've just discussed now around going back to the customer and increasing the package, or it might be doing something slightly different as well. I guess from a zero experience recruiter to 3 to 5 years, there's going to be very, I think, little differentiation in terms of my personal experience if I can get that leverage from the machine.
No doubt. And I've written about this in one of the blogs, that a lot of the things that the large language model may tell you, if you're a 5, 6, 7 year experienced recruiter in that same sector, in that same city or market, the information's probably going to confirm what you instinctively know. But if you're someone who's 6, 7, 8, 12, 18 months, you don't really know. So it's going to shrink the difference, to your point, between the experience level of that, let's call it senior recruiter, compared to the junior recruiter. And the difference will be not the application of the knowledge, but the skill, the actual how element. And again, going back to my point about the influencing skills, the coaching on the job from the leader, and the quick learning rather than the slow learning, which is what we've all experienced in our recruitment careers.
Ross, I'd love to know, my cohort are all smaller recruitment agency owners, 1 to 5, 10 people, but most of them are sort of that 1 to 5 end. So is there anything specific that you think that these guys should be thinking about over and above what we've spoken about in terms of the writing, the focus and finding? Is there anything else that you feel like for smaller businesses that's particularly relevant, or do you feel it all fits under that one umbrella?
Well, I think the most significant thing is that with a business of that size, and most of my clients are also that size, BK, is that the owner is typically, as you would no doubt experience, so consumed in the transactional part of running their business, the generating of work, candidates, supervising staff, that they're not giving themselves the time to think about the changes that are occurring, to go to vendor events, to go to conferences, to talk to the vendors at the conferences, to participate in groups to find out what's happening. And I think that's the biggest potential barrier. And so if I had one piece of advice for those owners is you have to get out of your business and ensure you have time to have those conversations, attend those events, talk to other owners, what are they doing, talk to the vendors, because otherwise they're going to find themselves wondering what's going on, second guessing. And I don't know, Andrew, obviously you provide very good services in that area, so that's something they could utilize. But ultimately, they're the owner of the business. They've got to feel confident about the decisions that they're making. And if they're just stuck in that hamster wheel of just forever generating and filling jobs and not cutting out, half a day a week to do that sort of exploratory work, and I think they're in real danger of suddenly finding their business like just running out of steam, and they're just not quite sure why.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I think two main things there is, relevance and risk, right? So that becoming ever more relevant, you do have to make sure that you've got a product that's sellable and market fit and up to speed with what the market is offering. But risk is also becoming ever greater on the radar for a lot of companies in this space, AI. So at the moment, we've got our Australian AI ethics principles, which are guidelines without, I don't think, the legal bite yet, but that I think is going to change very quickly in line with a lot of countries around the world employing these legal requirements for companies to act in a certain way and use and identify that they are using AI. What's your personal opinion on that, Ross? Should we as recruiters, owners, prepare for this in conjunction with the investigation of employing some of these technologies?
Yes, I mean, a classic example is exactly what LinkedIn have come up against recently, where they're advising people that their data is being used to train artificial intelligence. They can opt out. It appears Seek have done the same thing, except they haven't given people the option to opt out. So if we are in our databases using AI to learn from candidate information, what obligation do we have to let them know that that is occurring? Do our existing permissions and privacy release forms cover that? How specific do we need to be? We've got to have a process to ensure that if the candidate wants their information removed, that it's done so immediately. Like, I think these compliance issues are the ones that where clearly the tech is running at a faster rate than compliance can keep up. But these are important considerations because clearly all recruitment agencies have a lot of private information that they're holding.
And some agencies don't realise that there is not just their core recruitment database that they need to remove that candidate from. It's the parsing database, maybe. As the recMate comes into their world, it gets parsed, and that could be another database there. And AI modules or LLMs, that's another database that they need to have a process and, I guess, a way that they can act swiftly with those requests that I think will increasingly come in as people realise what's happening with data sets. Some people won't mind. To your point earlier, I think, BK, people will say, yes, this is actually more favourable for me. I'm going to get a fairer go in my applications, and I will sift to the top of the pile much more rapidly through the machine rather than the person.
Fascinating conversation. I knew this would be a great conversation with you, Ross. I knew it. And it has been. I'm just going to ask you, is there anything else that you feel like that you'd like to cover while we're here before
Just an additional response to your previous question, BK, about what owners should be thinking about is it's not just the impact of AI in the way that they recruit, but what's the impact that AI is going to have on the candidate market that you recruit in? So to give you a pretty simple example, if you recruit lawyers and paralegals, what impact is AI going to have on the market for lawyers and paralegals? Will it be the earth is flat and far more work is going to be done by talent outside of Australia, or accounting would be the same? Does it mean that many of these highly paid senior associates or even partners are going to be fewer because there's just not the volume of work to justify it, because all of that hourly rate chargeable work in accounting, in legal, is being gobbled up by AI, therefore less need for humans, therefore a shrinking candidate pool, or certainly in relative terms. I think that's another aspect for recruitment agencies to think very closely about. And that's why when you look at, say, Recruit Group, why have they invested in technology and reduced their reliance on staffing? Because they can see the way it's going. They can see that what's built Adecco, Randstad and Manpower into the three largest global recruitment businesses is effectively their death knell for the next 10 years, because they all rely on high volume, relatively low skilled recruitment. And the need for those big global agencies to do that work is just going to diminish rapidly. And Recruit Group realise you've got to have investments in tech, related tech, HR, recruitment tech, to make up for when the traditional staffing market starts to shrink.
That is such a good thing. So, in fact, it's interesting because I had literally just this very similar conversation with one of the girls that was in my program in the UK, and she was recruiting lawyers. So this is a conversation well over a year ago, and she was saying, we were talking about pain points in writing content, etc. And she was like, well, one of the big pain points for this legal industry is now they're like, do they actually hire grads anymore? There's so much. So then what happens? You've got this gap between, if the grads aren't coming in, how do they then get to that next step in their career? And that was, as I said, that was it was probably even closer to 2 years ago now. So that's a great point that you make there.
And there was an article in the Financial Times a couple of weeks ago, to your point, BK, about it's the worst market for graduates getting a job in like years and years and years and years, because clearly the market has been subdued, particularly for the top end of town that are the big hirer of grads. But also all of that work that grads traditionally have cut their teeth on to build up their experience and skills has all been gobbled up by AI. So it's really tough. I look at graduates coming through now and I think, man, it's like some of those people are never going to get what you'd call traditional graduate jobs.
That's so interesting, isn't it? And I think, it just really makes the case for we just have to all be across it, reading, keeping our knowledge up so that then we can make informed decisions. There's no use kind of going, oh, it's too hard, I'm not going to take any notice. It's here. It's, it's changing our lives. It's the biggest thing since probably the internet. Fascinating.
Without doubt. Absolutely without doubt. To me, the day technology impacted my job as a recruiter, I'll never forget it. Do we have time for a quick story?
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
It was in 1990 and Seek had pretty much just started. And I remember posting an ad for a shared service manager. And that was like quite a big deal job in those days. And I'd never recruited one before. And I posted that. It was for a big mining company. And it was like a massive salary. Like, this is 25 years ago. It's like 150, 160K. And I got 2 ad responses. And one was perfect. He'd worked doing that job and had worked for a mining company. And this is when I was in Adelaide, BK. And he was living in Perth and he was an Adelaide boy and he wanted to go back to Adelaide. So I'm like, my God, this is too good to be true. But it wasn't. So I got this ad response within like a day or two. I interviewed the candidate over the phone. I booked an interview in with the client. The client loved the candidate and hired the candidate. And I think I must have invested like 5 hours and my fee was like 28K or something. And I'm like, my God, how long has this been going on?
Isn't that amazing? Well, I can remember going through just having, when I started Recruitment Solutions, where we worked together, and the big compactors full of the files,
Oh, yeah.
And they were just changing over at that point. And so, all of a sudden, these big compactors were then turning into, we can actually have all this on I can't remember what database we had there, but online. But really, it's not. If you think about, what was that? 25, 30. Oh, no. Okay. That is no, it wasn't that even that long. So let's say 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 20 years. in some ways isn't a long time to have gone from that to where we are today, and the elevation that you were talking about, Ross, okay, everything's just speeding up. It's not a big window of time.
Yeah,
we're all really young and we remember when it wasn't like this.
Very young, very young.
Well, it's going to be kind of normal for people who are entering the recruitment industry or have recently entered, because if they've gone through tertiary education, then they've already had the experience of AI. It's what's going to happen to those, let's call, mid-career recruiters and small recruitment agencies that haven't built a lot of scale yet. Like, I think the jury's out, and AI is going to play a massive factor in whether they win or no.
Amazing conversation, Ross. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. And I feel a bit silly saying it because anyone can find anyone these days, but preferred way that people could get in touch with you to talk further?
Well, either connect on LinkedIn or go to rossclennett.com. If you're interested to read any of my blogs, you can find them by the blog tab on rossclennett.com. All the blogs that I've referenced in my conversation today, they're easily searchable on my site. And yeah, love to have a conversation with anyone.
Your podcast, we'll put that in the notes as well.
Yes. Yeah. So Recruitment News Australia, you can find it on Apple or Spotify, or go to the recruitmentnewsaustralia.com.au website, or the podcast tab on rossclennett.com.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, as I said in the beginning, you really go into the underbelly of everything, and just such a beautiful mix of experience, but absolute intelligence, thought leading, commentary as well. So
Thanks,
I've always thought that about you. And look, it's only getting more so as we move on in time, isn't it?
Well, I'm drawing on more experience. That's
exactly.
it. I'm finding
the data set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like I've got a lot to draw on. I mean, I love reading, so I'm continually absorbing new information all of the time, and it's stimulating, and so I believe it's helpful in reducing the aging process, the accumulation of new information. So I'll keep doing it.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you very much. I'm delighted to have you. Maybe we can get you back at some point.
It's been great, BK and Andrew. I appreciate you inviting me on, and look forward to the next conversation.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Tech Savvy Recruiter. If you'd like to stay up to date with the latest recruitment trends and insights, make sure that you remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And also, if you'd like to speak to Andrew about turning your tech stack into your secret weapon, or myself around creating an agency that delivers you more money, more meaning, and more freedom, we'd absolutely love to chat. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support. We look forward to seeing you next time.